Welcome back, eldrvzi, on to this week's version of. There's actually no segue for this, actually. I'm gonna just having like a quality app chest talking about my favorite archetype known as aggro or aggressive. Be sure to drop a like and leave a comment down below. Let me know if you like this type of content at all. We are on the road to 100, so make sure you guys subscribe. Aggro is one of three main archetypes that exist when it comes to playstyles. The first being mid-range or combo, the second being stacks or control, and then the third being aggressive / aggro. Like I said before, this game is called Nuance the Gathering. There technically, I guess not technically, there's a bunch of different playstyles that exist in the game of Magic the Gathering that can range from big mana as well as aristocrats and so on and so forth. But as far as the three main archetypes that like people usually build around or focus on, is going to be the three that I mentioned earlier. And yes, the other types of playstyles that I mentioned earlier, they are interchangeable. The outcome or execution can look a little bit different. The baseline is that you're trying to turn all your creatures sideways to win the game through damage. In a general scope, there's many ways to actually build your decks, but on a very narrow scope, the ways that people actually execute on this idea is either by building wide or building tall. A prime example of building tall is usually going to be using Voltron decks. The idea actually came from an old school animation from back in the day. It was a mech anime or Gundam where these teenagers got into these small little units and they came together to form one giant robot. The same premise exists within Magic the Gathering. The idea is that you use one central creature, you put on artifacts or equipments, and then you build from there. I do personally own a Voltron deck in Galea, Kindler, Pope. They are a 4-cost 4/4 with vigilance. They also read that you may look at the top card of your library at any point. You can cast auras and equipment from the top of your library. If you cast an equipment from the top of your deck, it automatically binds to the creature. And the way that I make this creature taller, quote unquote, is by using cards like Octopus Umbra as well as Drowsy Conscription to make them bigger and bigger and bigger. Just because it's the easiest way or more simplistic way to build tall does not mean it's the best, unfortunately. You do oftentimes fall into a spot called or referred to as glass cannon, where you go after one person and you leave yourself vulnerable to the other three. In that same regard though, we have decks like Zaxxra that also does build tall as well. I personally do own a Zaxxra deck. It's one of my longest surviving decks actually. They are a 4-cost 2/3 with Death Touch, and you can tap it and add 2 mana of any color to your mana pool. The most relevant part of the card says whenever you cast a spell that has X's out of it, you get a Hydra that's equal to that mana value. Creatures can get really huge out of nowhere, especially if you use more synergistic pieces such as Iceberg. Iceberg is X and 2 blue. It comes into the battlefield with that many Iceberg counters on it. You can also pay 3 mana and put another ice counter on top of there. The really cool thing is that you can remove any number of those counters from it and you can use it as colorless mana. So not only is it going to get value when it enters the battlefield, creating you a Hydra from that, it also can make another Hydra huge, which is ultimately what we want. Now on the opposite side of the spectrum, we have going wide. The idea is that you want to overwhelm your opponents by having multiple creatures on the battlefield and just swarming in with a bunch of damage. Usually this is where you see more anthem effects or cards that make your attacks a little bit more impactful, such as Beastmaster Ascension. Now usually the easiest way to implement this is by using token strategies. I do personally have a Genufade deck. It is centered around the idea of utilizing treasures, but ultimately I can convert those treasures over to either being 3/1 dogs or 2/2 cats. And I really like this deck's ability to convert resources into payoffs. I have cards in here such as Ancient Copper Dragon. That's going to be really useful obviously when it goes into deal damage. It does have the upside of giving you mana, of course, and then on top of that I can create a bunch of dogs. The other aspect that I really like about this deck is that it lends itself to small accrual over time. So incremental creatures every so often, like Descent into Avernus, which my playgroup genuinely does not like seeing when I play that card. It gives treasures to everybody on the battlefield, so it does speed up the game a little bit in that area. But then the other side of that is that I can convert those over once again into dogs or cats. It does not matter. So I'm going to get a lot of payoff from that. The baseline philosophy is that there's powers in numbers. You want to overwhelm your opponents, and no other deck knows that better than my last deck I'm going to talk about, which is my Adeline deck. Adeline is a 3-cost star 4. They have vigilance as well, and it says their power and toughness is equal to the number of creatures that you control. It also says that on attack, you get a 1/1 human creature tapped and attacking each opponent. Adeline goes a little bit harder in the idea of going wide, where I'm not really focusing down one person at all. I'm just trying to clip everybody all at once. So I tend to use more cards like Anointed Procession, Mondrak, and now Ojita. I really value quantity over quality inside of this deck, so I just want to overwhelm with the amount of creatures that I produce. And that is going to conclude our video for today. Really hope you guys enjoy this type of content where I'm just having a little bit of a yap session, like I said before, talking about the decks that I actually have and the playstyles that I like. Also, it's one of the first videos I did where I'm camera facing, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please comment down below your favorite type of aggro deck, if you guys like that type of playstyle, or if you have another type of playstyle that you really enjoy. Once again, we're on the road to 100, so make sure that you guys subscribe and like down below.